Sonic Boom Episode 1, The Sidekick. Why does the comedy show have a badass guitar theme song where the heroes try to act cool? The show is always confused having the heroes look like action heroes with Sonic's scarf and muscles just to be all about comedy. So let's see how many plot holes are in this show. We start out with Sonic chasing Eggman and then stopping right before he runs off a cliff. Eggman threatens Sonic with a robot named Burnbot, and it turns out they intentionally wrote Eggman to have a robot called Burnbot not shoot fire. It would have not been a horrible forced comedy if Eggman had intended to give it a flamethrower at first and couldn't because he was out of materials, and had to stick with the name because he had already permanently etched the name Burnbot into it. Instead, Eggman artificially is made to make a dumb mistake just so Sonic can humiliate him. Not a good start at all. I hope this isn't an establishing character moment for the kind of comedy we'll have. Tails makes an electrical rope Sonic somehow swings around on without electrocuting himself to death, and he hits something away because of that swinging around. Tails' plane gets damaged, with Sonic being worried because of it. He jumps away from a robot and hits the rock near him, which falls over on the robot to defeat it creatively. Then Eggman uses a magnet on his Eggmobile to pick up the robot, reusing it properly, remarking about its weight like that's a surprise. Sonic actually takes Tails' injury seriously and checks his heartbeat, and he remarks super seriously that he's never going to let him get hurt again. Of course, they won't let that be permanent, even though it's a significant story idea. And it would be bad if it was permanent, but it would make sense for it to last more than one episode. Sonic tries to talk positively to Tails when he tells him to retire for his own safety, and he uncharacteristically tells him casually that he fired him, which was stupid since he was just trying to soften the blow for Tails. I remember seeing a bunch of pictures unrelated to the show where Sonic fired Tails because he's worried about his injuries, and somehow Tails didn't start crying and getting really sad because of this in the show. Instead, he's just confused and mildly annoyed. After Eggman acts like a tsundere, saying that he would never want Sonic's respect after talking about it like he likes the idea, we get our time painfully wasted when Amy sings really annoyingly to Sonic to force comedy. In Fleetway, Amy was forced to deal with this bad singer, Fabian, so she was the only sane man, straight man to him. But here, she's the bad singer, because she's just comedy relief. At least here. Sonic's trying to get a new sidekick, and eventually Tails tries to audition for it, even though he was just fired. And it's completely forced that Sonic even agrees to this in the first place, because he fired Tails for his own safety. It's also really confusing that Eggman is trying to become Sonic's sidekick. Doesn't every single one of Sonic's friends equally qualify as a sidekick? Just because Tails is younger than him, he's always been seen as the only sidekick. Somehow, Sonic agrees to letting Eggman audition to be a sidekick, even though Eggman's his mortal enemy. Eggman's gotta be trying to become a double agent sabotaging Sonic. And Sonic's an idiot for not realizing this plan and just telling Eggman to get lost. The whole reason he needs a sidekick is to fight against Eggman. Tails and Eggman are somehow auditioning anyways, even though this is stupid, and they hoverboard over some grind rails. Eggman cheats, and the really annoying Beaver character gets sent away. I hope he gets abused like that every time. Tails avoids flying spike balls that obviously would have killed him, so Eggman in this show isn't above murder attempts. So he's clearly not harmless. Realistically, Eggman explains that he isn't actually here to become Sonic's sidekick, and this was just an excuse for him to lure them to his repaired robot, which he could have sent to them anyways at any time. And Tails gets threatened by it in his plane, and it starts falling and spinning around. I love that Sonic actually has good acting when he's all concerned about Tails. And the episode is showing that Sonic had a good point, instead of being completely wrong, because Tails is in danger again. Tails' plane is stuck in the ice, and as it sinks, somehow Sonic is needed to take him out of the plane. Tails dickishly says that Sonic put him in more danger by firing him, Even though, hello asshole, you were the one who decided to audition, so fuck you! Sonic was worried about you! Anyways, Sonic then almost sinks in the water, and he inexplicably tells Tails to go on without him. His weight actually drags Tails under the water, which would never happen, and you'd think that falling into water below some ice would immediately kill them both from hypothermia, but that doesn't happen. Tails flies Sonic away as I wonder how the robot threatening them got defeated. A spin dash, I guess? Eh. And Eggman flies away in his Eggmobile and says he'll get a robot to make him ham. Can't he just use Orbot to do that anyways? How could he forget about him? Then Amy demands a callback from Sonic like a spoiled brat. And she starts singing and running after Knuckles. Was this characterization just a joke by the writer? Honestly, she came off as literally insane in this episode. Six the Badger didn't say anything as far as I can recall, and it's weird that Amy is the crazy one here. They really had no idea how to characterize her this episode. Fortunately, they made Sonic a good character this episode. I was impressed at how the show took something seriously. I thought it literally never did that, and it would just be an endless parade of worthless fourth wall breaking jokes and fan humoring meta humor. But fortunately, the episode was acceptable to watch. I'm glad it showed restraint for the pilot. Tails gets injured by a plane crash, and Sonic is genuinely worried about him. And the show takes it so seriously that he actually checks his heartbeat, and we hear it. And Tails is actually injured. And Sonic actually has concerned acting from Roger Craig Smith instead of always sounding annoying like in Colors. Unfortunately, this is as far as it goes. Somehow, Tails' reaction to being told to retire is nothing but confusion and resentment. It was really subdued compared to what I'd expect. Underwhelming. He wouldn't react like this. Where he's like, wait, did Sonic just say that? Just checking. He'd be way more emotional than this! This is like something I'd expect Ponzak and Graf to write in Lost World. I would expect Tails to react to this by being really sad, and becoming desperate to get himself involved in the heroes' fights with Eggman by himself, and be using his inventions to try to help out in an eager attempt to prove himself like an excited little kid. But instead, he ridiculously insists on participating in an audition to replace the role that he took, and somehow, Sonic actually agrees to let him participate, after he was so scared of him getting hurt again. This is where the writing falls apart. Not only does he easily let Tails audition to be a sidekick, with Tails not doing anything to earn it from him, like save his life, but he also lets Eggman audition to be a sidekick, which was completely stupid of him. Isn't he supposed to be the genre-savvy protagonist? Wouldn't it be obvious to him that Eggman was just planning against him? Eggman would have to brainwash him with Hypno Rays to make this logical. But instead of playing fair and square to try to replace Tails' role and then getting kicked out of the role naturally because he tried to kill Sonic, instead of the plot letting this idea progress to its natural ending point, Eggman just cheats to try to kill Tails right away during the audition. If that was his plan all along, then he didn't need to pretend to be auditioning. He could have just had a flying spy robot like a ladybug-shaped robot fly after the heroes to let him know where they'll be next. And that way he'd know where to go to fight Sonic and Tails next. He didn't need to lure them here after embarrassing himself by trying to become Sonic's sidekick. Which no Robotnik would ever do. That's wildly out of character. And I really hated that when Sonic explained why he told Tails to retire for his safety, instead of Tails being kind and understanding to him and reminding us why they are best friends, instead he's a childish douchebag reminding me of his character in Lost World, because he blamed Sonic for getting him in more danger. Sure, Sonic shouldn't have agreed to let him go to that place in the audition, which somehow also included Fastidious Beaver. But excuse me, Tails was the one who decided to audition. He could have just stayed home like Sonic wanted, and he would have been fine. And it's ridiculous that Sonic didn't even consider Knuckles as his new sidekick. That should have been obvious from the start. At least in every other continuity. He should have been the audition instead of that worthless beaver. The sequence of events never would have come to play. Well, it wouldn't be a Sonic continuity without giant plot holes making a whole story ridiculous. Logically, what would have happened is that Sonic wouldn't even bother making an audition and would just choose Knuckles right away. Eggman would simply go to fight Knuckles and Sonic and keep it simple, And then Tails would show up having followed them, and that's when he'd be mandatory to save the day. So Sonic would take him back because he was forced to acknowledge that he needs his help, whether he likes it or not. Instead, Sonic somehow agreed to letting Tails endanger himself in the very same episode where he told him to retire, which was very forced. And Eggman was allowed to do the audition with him, because good writing is overrated. And just like in AOSCH, we see Tails injured and then we immediately get a time skip where he's not injured anymore. But again, I'm happy to see that the episode was at least trying to be a competent episode, keeping me invested in the show, instead of making me cynical about it the entire time from terrible jokes. I was cynical about it, but only because the writing was so bad. It took things seriously for a little bit, with Sonic being worried about Tails when he got hurt. And I don't remember constant fourth wall breaking all the time. The only joke that seriously annoyed me was Amy's random singing. It was cringe-worthy seeing her like that. What have they done to this character? They don't know what to do with her when she's not fangirling over Sonic, which is a shame because Sonic the Comic was able to make her a respectable hero in her own right perfectly fine without her being a fangirl. She was a cheerful snarker who had witty, snarky lines, basically being Sonic but with actual social skills. And she was a clever badass. Not a girl who randomly sings for no reason, and his means were friends. Why did she ever think that would make her a good sidekick for an action hero? She really doesn't work this way. And Tails being a douche to Sonic doesn't work either. It felt like their big brother, little brother dynamic was completely one-sided. Sonic's the big brother, and instead of Tails hugging him and having his hair ruffled and following him around like an excited little puppy waiting for the next adventure, which is his whole appeal, instead Tails is just a regular friend to him, being merely annoyed and obsessed with his own ego. Like he wants to earn his approval, but he's not doing it with childlike energy and admiration for Sonic, which would actually portray him as acting his age. He's just being a generic, interchangeable friend who wants to prove he's the greatest person ever. Like he says the robots are nothing I can't handle. That doesn't work either. I'll always hate how they thought they needed to develop Tails out of being the excited little brother to Sonic, because that destroyed the whole point of and appealed to his once likable character when they just made him another arrogant genius, and ignored the fact that he's supposed to be a child, at which point, why make him a kid? And even before he became outright arrogant, right after they developed him out of that, they just made him this bland exposition fairy genius. So I was bored by him. That's not character development because it's not improving on him, because he's less interesting. I think Tails could be a teenager in the show, and there'd be no difference. But that was a pretty brilliant plot for the show, taking things seriously for a change. Aside from the lame Burnbot joke and Amy being humiliated, and Eggman being allowed to audition for the role of Sonic's sidekick, which was painfully forced comedy that's hard to forgive, other than that, the episode was respectable. But that audition thing did threaten to go overboard in the stupidity, which is something Boom's been accused of. Here's the way I'm going to be doing these reviews. I'll be reviewing 2 shorts in one video every time, and labeling the second short as episode whatever-2. If I didn't do my reviews like this, then uploading all of my Boom reviews would take twice as long. There's so many episodes of the show, and not to mention each individual review would be shorter, sometimes unacceptably so. It would take forever to review the whole show otherwise. So next up is episode 1-2. Episode 1-2. Can an evil genius crash on your couch for a few days? I always hate it when the episode titles are like an actual sentence. It just makes me feel embarrassed, like saying them out loud, for some reason. And they're too long, sometimes. We start out with Sonic snoring on the couch. First off, the snoring's really annoying. And second, what the hell is the excitable main hero of the world doing sleeping on the couch instead of a bed? Then Eggman shows up at his door acting awkwardly polite, and says that his base was destroyed in the storm, and begs Sonic to let him sleep at his house. Sonic naturally says that Eggman might capture him while he's sleeping, and Eggman says he doesn't have any weapons and will only be here for a few days. And he's at least nice enough to call Orbot and Cubot family. I don't buy that Eggman would have pink pajamas, let alone a onesie. It's like, this is a pretty obvious embarrassment to the character of Dr. Robotnik. Well, at least it's interesting that he's picky about his food. He's feeling like a deeper character already. He complains that the salmon he got is farm-raised, and he doesn't like his eggs either. I couldn't understand anything Styx said until the last few words. Amy sympathizes with Eggman of all people. Well, at least it shows that she's supposed to be a compassionate person, but I want her to show that to more people than him. And surprisingly, Eggman's just as creeped out. And while it is good for Tails' character to be naive, he'd never say that Eggman isn't so bad after all. And naturally bothers Tails when he's working. The only way this episode can make sense is that Eggman thinks killing the heroes in their sleep would be way too easy and anticlimactic. And the heroes are genre savvy enough to trust him not to do that because they know him well. I mean, we could at least see that the heroes lock their bedroom doors and windows so that he wouldn't be able to go up to them. It's revealed that somehow there are containers in the fridge with Eggman's logo on them. And Tails reveals that Eggman hit him with a pillow so hard that he has short-term memory loss. That's pretty hard to buy unless he hid bricks in the pillow or something. But even then, Tails doesn't look cut or injured, and he's not actually brain damaged, or it'd be permanent. He wouldn't get that kind of effect from a pillow being thrown at him, and if he did, why are they so complacent with Eggman then? Shouldn't they just kick him out right now because of that? Aren't they supposed to be protective of Tails? Sonic tells off Eggman, and he starts crying, just to say that Orba and Cuba aren't people. Wait, so first he calls them family, and then he says they're not people? Make up your mind. And when Amy tells Sonic to be more forgiving of Eggman, and asks for a group hug, Eggman refuses to let his own robots join in. That's mean of him. Like, do they want him to be evil or ridiculously nice? The hero should have let them hug anyways. They should have hugged the robots anyways, if they're supposed to be such good guys. Eggman stays up with Sonic and Tails, making them tired playing a game with them. I have no idea which game it was. He says that his robots have no souls. I also don't buy that they can't get tired. You can't leave a computer on all the time. And I refuse to believe that Sonic and Tails would actually agree to spend all night with Eggman watching TV. Also, why the hell is Eggman not tired when Sonic and Tails are? Actually, it would have made sense if he explained that he took a caffeine pill or something, so that he can't get tired at night. Styx freaks out because she thinks making Sonic and Tails tired was all part of his evil scheme. Amy makes me hate her by stupidly saying that she's just being paranoid. Then Eggman says that he faked his base's destruction, and making Sonic tired was his evil plan. That evil plan still hinged on the ridiculous assumption that Sonic and Tails would willingly stay up all night with him. Eggman makes me excited by sending a giant robot after Sonic, just for the robot to somehow get set on destroying Eggman's island fortress. That wouldn't happen. It makes sense if Tails hacked his robot. I was all set for an action climax of the story. You know, because that's how Sonic episodes are usually structured. Eggman does have a good convincing argument for Sonic helping him though. He wouldn't stop living with Sonic if he didn't get his base back. But can't they just get a new house for him? Can't they force him to stay at an inn? I mean, with the way that the villagers tolerate Eggman too much, instead of always going after him in an angry mob with pitchforks, you'd think that they would let him stay at an inn. Sonic says his friends have to distract the giant robot for him, and he runs around dodging some lasers while Tails presses some buttons and interacts with some square solid holograms, which gets rid of the laser field. And Sonic's too tired to really be useful. Why didn't Amy give him some coffee? Seriously, how stupid was Amy to not think, maybe I should give them coffee? But since only Sonic and Tails can do the special skills unique to them, it makes sense that Amy and Eggman still relied on them despite how tired they are, because they don't have a choice right now. Still, it's not that exciting to watch Sonic and Tails be really tired and sleepy. This is supposed to be an exciting franchise. Wait, how'd Eggman get right behind Sonic? Sonic had to run around using his super speed just to get here. He avoided lasers, didn't he? I guess it's because Tails disabled all of the security system. Eggman powers down the central operating system, just as the giant robot threatens Styx. Eggman has to use a whistle to make Sonic and Tails alert enough that they can both use the levers to shut down the robot. And then Sonic smacks the head off the robot with the metal slab and it explodes. At least the base's imminent destruction with some kind of tension. But it'd be better if Sonic had an actual fight. The story ends with Eggman trying to stay at Sonic's house again, just to run away from Amy because she tries to get him to talk about his feelings. Granted, I understand why she would hope that she could get Eggman to change by talking to him, so she could learn his tragic past and stuff. But this is so idealistic of her. She just tries to get him to talk about his feelings. Robotnik of all people? Seriously, it's like she was written by a man who has no idea how women actually act in the real world, so he just turned her into a parody of them. That man clearly never had a female friend before. This is what Amy's reduced to in this show. At least she's being portrayed as compassionate, which is way better than her being a bitch. I wish she was always compassionate. But she's also being a complete moron, sympathizing with Eggman of all people, and somehow expecting him to cooperate with her. I'd much rather Amy always be compassionate, but still not with Eggman. But it does suit her to be idealistic because of the adventure games. But not this much. This episode was interesting, with Eggman being a mildly obnoxious roommate to Sonic for a few days. But I felt like it was underwhelmingly executed. Sure, he's a picky eater, and he makes them stay up all night playing a game and watching TV because, as he literally said, he's lonely. That makes sense. But what doesn't make sense is that Eggman himself is magically immune to being sleepy when he stayed up just as much as Sonic did. Is he an android who only looks organic? Which would make actual sense considering his last name is Robotnik. I expected Eggman to be worse of a roommate than this. Instead, he didn't make as much of an impact as I expected. I guess he thought that he could only push things so far before they kick him out. But he pushed things pretty far with trying to make them stay up all night. Him complaining after one of the heroes was nice enough to feed him was the only really effective way that he sucked as a roommate. That was believable that he would think he could get away with it. It does make sense that a hedonist like him would want to focus on eating the food that's as tasty as possible. So that's what I do. But he was obviously pushing his luck with them there. It was some good character moments for him that he insisted on saying Orbot and Cubot weren't people and had no souls, and refused to hug them, because it reminded me that this is still Dr. Robotnik. Archie Eggman would do the same thing, but that contradicts him saying they were his family. So he was just saying that to manipulate the heroes into letting him bring them here, but if he doesn't care about them, then why would he feel the need to bring them here? He doesn't need them. He doesn't think they're people, but then why does he insist on having them with him in the house instead of just leaving them outside? To stand in the rubble of his base, or his not rubbled base. If his base was never actually destroyed, why didn't the heroes check to see if the base was destroyed before they let him in? He could have easily been lying. You'd think they'd look on a GPS. If he didn't trust Orbot not to abandon him, he would have reprogrammed that out of him. It does make sense that Eggman can't just live somewhere else, because it's not like there's an empty house waiting to be sold in town. I'm not sure you can just live in a house right after you buy the mortgage. And who would ever let Eggman live in a house in town if they could help it? He had to rely on Sonic because he knows he and his friends are all such good people that they'd help him to appease their consciences. Especially Amy. And plus he knows them, so he took advantage of them. And besides, even if he could live somewhere else, living with Sonic was part of his whole plan, which somehow Sonic actually agreed to instead of just telling him to get lost like a normal person. Logically, he'd kill the heroes in their sleep at midnight, but that'd be too anticlimactic for him. So I wish he told us that, so that it'd make more sense, because this is even stupider than the plot of Sonic Labyrinth, where Eggman stuck into Sonic's house when he was sleeping, just to put special shoes on him and leave. Thankfully he had a giant robot though, which we didn't get to see give us a great action scene at the end. Instead the show gets boring, as Sonic is all sleepy, and eventually he and Tails pull some levers. After getting past the security system in Eggman's base, because somehow his own giant robot decided to try to destroy his base, even though he was telling it not to. That came out of nowhere. It's sad when the comic book has more action than the show, because the comic showed the heroes fighting a giant mecha no problem, and made it the focus of the scene.